The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, greetings from Minneapolis, everybody. Come to you cordless. It's Thursday night, September 18th, 2025. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night, episode number 276, if you're marking your scorecards at home. Now, I have not been feeling that good the last couple days. I have to apologize. We took 2 nights off this week, Monday and Wednesday, because I've been under the weather. I don't really know why. Although not last night, the night before, Wednesday morning, I slept like 13 hours. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me, but I'm fine now. I feel okay. So here we are. Our guest tonight is John Adams. He's the proprietor of the website adventuresinremoteviewing.com. And he's going to explain to us all about what remote viewing is. We taped this afternoon, so I already know what happened. It's like, and he talks about the fact too that you not only can remote view in space, you can also do it within time too, which is it's hard to believe. This is the type of stuff almost science fiction, but it's been reliably proven now that this works. Now, if just give an example, our friend Bruce Solheim was on the show about 6-8 weeks ago, and he said he's a trained remote viewer, and that's the other thing too. And John will talk about this, about the fact that basically it's been determined that anybody can be trained to do this. The government they not only had to set up a remote viewing project called Project Stargate, and this started in the 1970s, but they came up with a protocol to train people how to do this. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to be Babe Ruth or Mario Lanza. It's like opera singing, which is an analogy I like to use, and the one that actually Bruce uses too. You're not going to be may not be Pavarotti, but you can do it reasonably well. So some people do have a natural talent for it, and they do it well. They do it much better than others, but still, supposedly anyone can train to do this. And John explains the fact that he trained himself. So we'll talk to him about that. It's utterly fascinating. As I said, the government ran a program on this. Officially, they said they shut it down after 10 years because the results were quote unquote inconclusive. But everyone says no, it actually worked. The people involved in the government project, and I know the government. They probably just renamed it and are still doing it, because the government doesn't let anything go that actually works. So that's probably what's going on there. Anyway, so John's coming up in a couple minutes. Now, what do we got going on next week? Tomorrow night is Friday. We're taking our usual. We don't do Fridays here. We're doing a usual best of. It's the Ukraine show that ran last Tuesday, September 9th. Those 3 guys are coming on. Now, this is kind of interesting. I'd like to think everything we do is interesting, but that's maybe just me too. So Jonathan Lockwood is a regular guest on this program. He's basically become our default military expert. He comes on, and whenever we're talking about, especially like conflicts with Russia or China, or the war in Ukraine, or that sort of thing. He's a former Army colonel. He's written 2 books on military strategy. One of them is used as a textbook at Annapolis, from what I understand. Very knowledgeable guy. He's involved in this podcast with 2 other gentlemen, Sasha Starr and Ivan Kurchenko. Ivan, and the reason this podcast gets so much buzz is because Ivan's actually in Ukraine. Excuse me. he broadcasts from Ukraine. It's the only podcast actually that comes out of Ukraine about the Ukraine-Russia war. And so because of that, they've been getting a lot of attention. So all three of them came on the show. This is a week ago, Tuesday, on the 9th, and we had a really nice discussion. And the interesting thing about this is that, and you should watch this if you haven't watched it. All three of these guys have come to the conclusion that there should be no settlement in this war, that Ukraine has to win because they have no choice, because they say that Putin cannot be trusted in a ceasefire. And I have to say, they've kind of, after listening to this for 45 minutes, they kind of convinced me. I I mean, Putin at this point, I don't know. Well, he's evil. He's always been evil, probably. If you listen to my boyfriend Bill O'Reilly, just has a book out called "Confronting Evil," and I shouldn't say this, but I'm trying to get Bill to come on the show. I actually do know him a little bit, but enough so that I've talked to him about it. So I don't know if that's going to happen soon, because in the length of the lineup of outlets that he's going to do to promote the book, I'm sure we'd be at the bottom of the list. But that means maybe we can get him on in 3 or 4 months. Uh, but um, he's the book Confronting Evil is about 15 evil people in history, and he's included Putin in one of them, and he's absolutely convinced Putin's evil, and I can't argue with that. But the other thing that he talks about, that he's stressed he has a direct line to Trump, that, and he says that Trump is probably the problems Trump's had with this is that Putin, at least during Trump's first term, was not crazy. Now it appears Putin's nuts, that he's lost it. And so because of that, there's no rationality in negotiating with him. And that's exactly where the three guys from the Ukraine show are at too. They don't think there's any rationality in Putin wanting to stop this war. He just wants the territory, he wants the country, and he thinks he will fight to the bitter end until he has it. Until uh, these guys think, and O'Reilly too also thinks, that Putin is sensitive to pressure from the Russian public. He knows that if he pisses them off enough, he will be removed. He's aware of that. But other than that, he doesn't care. So anyway, yeah, that we're gonna rerun that tomorrow night, and watch that, because all three of these guys are very knowledgeable. And as I said, Ivan is in Ukraine. Sasha Starr is in Toronto, Canada, but he's from Ukraine, and this was really interesting too. We did this Zoom connection with people in 3 different countries, and it worked out just fine. There's no delay at all. Thank Al Gore for starting the inner tube. Anyway, so that's this coming Friday, tomorrow night. Monday night, Don Zorro is coming back here for his Monday appearance. He's a crowd favorite. The crowd loves him. Intelligence operator and lover of women, I call him. He's always got something interesting to say. Tuesday night, Eric Weir. He's a financial advisor, and he's a principal of the WCM Global Wealth LLC wealth advisory firm, and he's written a book called Who's Eating Your Pie? Essential financial advice that will transform your life. He's going to be here on Tuesday. Wednesday, I got to make certain I pronounce this woman's name right. Mandy Gunasekera is coming on, and she has written a book called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Now, she worked in Trump's first term as the chief of staff for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. That was in Trump's first term, and so she's been around the swamp a little bit. She has some things to say, and I think that'll be it's going to be kind of interesting to talk to her too, because I get the impression she would be, as my generation would call her, a pistol. So we're looking forward to that. Friday the 25th, or no, I'm sorry, Thursday the 25th, a week from tonight. I don't know if we're going to do a show or not. I don't. I originally arranged to take the night off, but because we took 2 nights off this week, I might cancel that, and we might schedule a guest. So I'm going to feel this out this weekend. I'll let you know on Monday. That's what's going on here. Got to thank Kimberly again for helping book guests. My God, it's like I've said this before. doing the show is not hard. Booking the guests is hard. That's what's hard. And we're trying to book 2 guests a show. And as you've noticed, since the beginning of the month, we're not succeeding. It's not so far. It's not going well, but we at least come up with one every show. So that's good, you know. But that's we're trying to do 2. So we'll try some more. All right. In 12 seconds, here's John Adams. Stay tuned, please. Joining us from his office in Austin, Texas, John Adams, the proprietor of the website Adventures in Remote Viewing. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Man, we talk about this on this show a lot, and I've got a hell of a lot of questions. First of all, how did you get into this? What was your interest, or what was your door in?
In remote viewing, or this particular topic?
No, remote viewing.
Okay. You know what? I was always interested in these kinds of things, even as a kid. And even before remote viewing, I've been delving into things like out of body and other explorations, binaural beat type tapes and stuff like that on audio tape. In fact, I've got this book I just happen to have on the table. So it was one of the books laying around when I was a kid. This is one of the Seth books. So I was always curious about those kinds of things. And I had heard about it on the internet, like in the late 90s. In fact, a book that I had before that kind of covered Ingo Swann a little bit. But I eventually, downloaded the manual and did some trainings along the way, and more so practice and train with some different teachers along the way.
For the people who are watching this show for the first time, can you give us a good definition of what remote viewing is?
So remote viewing technically is looking at something and getting information about that something regardless of time or location, so outside time and space. And it's based on a set of target numbers or coordinates. And, generally speaking, it's done blind. And that sort of separates it from like psychic viewing and stuff like that.
Okay, so now the way I understand that when you're talking about like blind or coordinate remote viewing, the way I understand this works is that people are given a longitude and latitude, or in spatial coordinates, and they might not know where that place is, and they probably don't. But the reason it works is because somebody in the universe does, right?
Yeah, a bit of a misnomer, because it first started out where they had coordinates, geodesic coordinates around Earth, and they would give those out, and then they discovered, well, maybe there are certain instances where that could be giving out too much information, or they could pick up on what part of the world that might be. So they kind of stuck with the name a little bit, but usually it's like target reference number, aka TRN. And so you don't really find anyone. Occasionally you'll have like a set of coordinates if you want to look at something, but that's embedded within a random target number. And so, you can look at anywhere.
So tell me if I'm right about this. The target numbers work in that one person like seals the target in an envelope numbered 13, right? And you're giving the number 13, target envelope 13, and then that's it, right? That's the way it works. So
exactly. Some variation of that, conventionally it's like an 8-digit number. It could be the number 13. It could be on a folded piece of paper. It could even be in your head, and you're referencing that, or saved on your computer. But a lot of times you'll have something written down on a card or in an envelope or something like that.
But it works because one other person somewhere in the universe knows what that is, right? Correct?
Yeah, it's basically sort of the main thing is the intent behind it. And then where that intent is going is basically held, it's touched upon by virtue of like everything being an informational field or
Right.
information-based universe.
So what have you, or what conclusions have you personally drawn about collective unconscious working with this whole thing? Because obviously there's some collective unconscious involved in, or there has to be, if you are actually referencing something that someone else knows, right?
So if you're referencing something that someone else knows, then that might be considered. I'm sorry, let me mute my phone.
That's okay. That's all right.
So that would be like telepathic overlay, where you're like getting into the thoughts of someone. If you're technically directly doing that, really, you can think of it as address or identifier, the target and the number. It's just something point to which some people might consider, looking actually at something. Someone can consider it tapping into the Akashic records, or the all that is, or intelligent universe. So you're not necessarily, just telepathically looking into the mind of someone who they may have a limited understanding of what this target is anyways, or
right.
no
Now,
understanding.
I set this all up for people who basically don't know too much about this. Could you explain what the Akashic record is?
Yeah, so it is kind of, I could think of it sort of metaphorically as like a hall of records or library. And sometimes you'll have people in, like, say, near-death experiences where they're going in and they're actually seeing a library, and it may be on a disc or something like that they're pulling out and saying, well, this is your life review, or this is this record. But it's kind of, to me, it's a little bit metaphorical. It could be both. It could be that, and also just really, I think, higher reality information that is able to be accessed and is always present.
Are you familiar with what the UFO community calls the Yellow Book? Are you familiar with that term? Or?
The Yellow Book, I don't know. Maybe you can.
Yeah, that's supposedly the gray aliens have a holographic record of everything humans, Homo sapiens, have ever done, and it can be accessed for any point in time, and it's literally a yellow cube, I guess, supposedly. I just wonder if it's kind of sort of the same thing what you're talking about. Except I think that, and how's it pronounced? Akashic?
Akashic, yeah.
Yeah.
Those races are purported to be like high in technology and relying on technology. So I could see how they might use something like that. Maybe it helps facilitate or have a good connection to it. I don't know.
Yeah. But the Akashic record is supposed to be basically a universal, right? It's supposed to be kind of the history of the universe, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now, all right. So I had people on here talking about remote viewing before, and we're going to talk about, I want to ask you about Project Stargate, because that's the big deal. And I read Ingo Swann's book, Penetration, which I found absolutely fascinating. But the thing that I have a real hard time with, and you can address this because I think you did this yourself, you'll have to tell me. There's people who say that this isn't a natural talent. Basically, anybody can be taught to do it. And I had my guest, Bruce Solheim, was on here, and he used the same analogy I did, and that's kind of like opera singing. There's some people are way better at opera singing than others, but basically anybody can sing, or pretty much. And is that true? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, that's very similar. I would use that analogy or something similar, to playing a musical instrument or a sport or something like that. There are going to be people that are more naturally talented or more easily gravitate to something. However, you could spend a lifetime and, get good results too. So, I find that even people that are sort of closed off to it, once they actually learn it and try it, they surprise themselves. So it is something that pretty much anybody can learn, but maybe not everyone will be an outstanding expert.
Yeah. So are you self-taught yourself?
Originally, I sort of learned along the way and with other things that I had sort of delved into. And as I say, I kind of began researching it, following Ingo Swann and the CIA materials. And then I did some training along the way, and I've worked with many other remote viewers, and that's been nice, a good experience.
And am I right about this, that in Project Stargate, they actually came up with a teaching method to teach people how to do this? Is that right?
Yeah, that was one of Ingo Swan's main focus in these military programs, was kind of to develop a teachable system where they could take a soldier or whomever off the street and throw them in a room and train them, give them training materials and teaching, and off they go.
So why don't you tell us about how Project Stargate was a project of the CIA, is that right, in the 1970s?
Yeah, in the early 70s, they were sort of one of the original handlers. I mean, it was Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, as well as Ingo Swan, who were, at SRI, at Stanford Research Institute. And along came the CIA as well. And just over the course of, through the 70s and 80s, it kind of evolved a little bit, and had some different names, but is referenced as Stargate through most of it.
And I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I have to, because supposedly this program has been discontinued, but I'm just assuming they've renamed it and it's going on, because, I mean, they confirmed it works, right?
Yeah. I think they got, pretty good results, especially among the really good remote viewers. Of course, Pat Price and Joe McMonagall got good results, and
Right.
I guess, and people like that. So, yeah, I mean, they saw pretty early on, and that's why they continued for over 2 decades.
And am I right about this, that they got into this because they came to the conclusion the Soviets were doing it? Is that right?
I think that's originally was a huge influence, and I think that they were delving into it before that in other ways. But and supposedly, like, the Chinese might have given some misinformation or whatever to lead them to believe that. I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, it was, a little bit part of the Cold War period and race.
So this was the Stanford Research Institute was a research institute started at Stanford University, and Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were basically the two chief scientists, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And if I'm right, I didn't actually look this up, but Targ isn't with us anymore, correct?
Last I checked, he was still alive. But
okay, all right.
Yeah.
I know Puthoff. I knew Puthoff is. I know that. I didn't know about Targ either way. I thought maybe he'd passed away.
Okay. But, of course, Ingo Swan had passed away.
John, I was wrong once in 1972. So I mean, I still remember that distinctly. I was in high school.
Okay.
Well, Puthoff is a really, really eminent physicist. I mean, he's one of the top physicists in the United States, and he's done all sorts of stuff for the government. I mean, the guy's under so many security clearances, it's ridiculous. Security oaths, it's ridiculous at this point. I don't know if you saw this. He just went on a podcast about a month ago, and he said, he said the military has 10 crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft, and I couldn't see, considering the tangle of security stuff he must be under, how he could have said that, but he did. I mean, maybe at this point, he's pushing 80. I think maybe he doesn't care anymore. I don't know. But I mean, you can get thrown in jail for saying that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, this could be part of like a partial disclosure, slow.
Oh, and by the way, I have to ask you: are you under any security oaths yourself?
No, I'm strictly freelance contractor.
Because all right, I told you about my friend Bruce Solheim, who came on here about 6 weeks ago, and he told me he is. Because he's a former military officer, and he's kind of been dragged back into this. But he said this publicly on the show, so I have no trouble repeating it. He said the military asked him to find 3 of the hostages that the Hamas had taken in the Gaza Strip, to find them via remote viewing, and he did. And he said they were correct. All 3 of them were correct. They were in the locations they said he was. He said so. He felt very good about that, but he can't. He said he can't talk a lot about it. I was actually surprised he could bring that up, but he did.
That would be a topic that would be sensitive, and yeah, something that would be hard to discuss, I guess.
Yeah. You were talking about McGonagall and Swan and their involvement in Stargate. Can you tell us about Uri Geller? Because this guy, he has a kind of an unusual, or I'll just say straight out, shady reputation. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah, it goes back to, what was it, Johnny Carson or something like
yeah,
that? He was doing his sort of stage show, and some things were kind of dubious. I'm not a real like follower or know his full history. I know he was in some ways associated, because he was a psychic and or alleged psychic, and rubbed shoulders and probably helped work on the project or something like that. Was not a preeminent figure, I don't think, over the years, but was involved in certain ways.
yeah. The thing I understand from the thing with Carson is that the impression I'm under, for many years, I thought the guy was a fraud. But I've been the more I talk to people and read, it seems like he had this basically a nightclub act that was completely separate from his actual abilities. So he was doing, for lack of a better term, magic tricks, and then he was a true psychic, and that's kind of hard to kind of balance, but that's the impression I'm under now, is he actually did have some legitimate ability. But yeah, when he went on TV, he was just basically dealing cards. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of framing it, because I was like you when I was younger. I kind of had the same impression just from it being sort of a stage actor or whatever. But yeah, I think he had some psychic abilities and was part of the remote viewing in some way.
So the reason I asked you on the show is because you did an experiment recently that made the news regarding the Atlas, or 3i Atlas, or let's call it a comet right now. And your experiment's not the only person who's been talking about this. Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist, he's been saying there's things about this comet that are completely unusual. One is that, first of all, he has claimed that it's taken a route through the solar system that basically by chance would be almost impossible, because it's going to fly by pretty much every major planet. He said normally the circuit to do that would be almost by chance almost impossible. And he's also said now that it appears to be generating its own light. So he has speculated that this is an artificial object, or maybe an extraterrestrial drone. So now, can you tell us about the experiment you did?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because the object is, I think, flying closest to Mars, and now they've discovered that it's flying even closer, like maybe twice as close as they thought. But that's still maybe 16 million miles, something like that. But close enough to be kind of eyebrow raising or interesting to note. Yeah, the whole path, the angle to the ecliptic, many features about it are certainly interesting, just alone, aside from the remote viewing. And so I began looking at it and creating this project in early August, I guess it was. Yeah, probably beginning of August. And just started getting a lot of interesting data, putting it together eventually, and then observing what was going on. And we were just getting lots of agreeing specific data.
And when you say we, you're talking about you specifically. There were 6 other remote viewers, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And basically, the reason is that they basically all, for lack of not getting into the weeds, they all came up with the same thing, correct?
I mean, every remote viewing session is going to be kind of a piece of the puzzle, but this had a lot of converging data. Obviously, each session is not going to be exactly the same or line up exactly, but we had enough convergent data that they were all very similar. Some viewers will go deeper down one avenue or see a bigger picture, another person, and they may have less pages or insights or whatever. But yeah, there was lots of overlap and correlation.
And so what was the conclusions that the 6 remote viewers drew, or that you could collectively say from all of them?
Yeah, based on impressions, it seemed overwhelmingly artificial, alien in nature, and high technology, artificial intelligence. These are a lot of the impressions that came up. Now, we're not saying this is absolutely the case, but this is
Okay.
interesting in the framework of remote viewing, where you have all this stuff that's looking
Well,
certain.
statistically, the chances of that happening are pretty slim, aren't they?
They're pretty slim. I mean, and then you take that in tandem with what we're already seeing, and it's painting a very interesting picture. If we put all of our eggs in one basket, then you could set yourself up for failure. There are other possibilities, explanations. If it turns out to be completely natural and absolutely proven to be a comet, then I'm going to be pretty surprised, and that's going to be one of the anomalies within remote viewing, really.
Well, I know that on the Mars flyby, they're going to send is it Renaissance? I can't remember the name of the Mars viewing platform. They're going to send it after it. But will they have any definitive? Will they be able to get enough definitive data to definitively decide what this thing is? That's the thing I don't know.
Yeah, so I believe they have like at least 7 orbiters around Mars. They're going to be able to get, as it goes near Mars, they're going to be able to get some good data around that. And then they even have some rovers on Mars, a couple of rovers that could probably, utilize their sensors or something like that. So I think it's going to help paint a good picture. And then you've got these other telescopes along the way that can probably get better images leading up to, and then probably after it passes the sun in late November, December. But
John, I got a couple old girlfriends that live on Mars.
Is that right? Well,
yeah. They're out there. Hey, the thing that I have to ask you though, that was not in any of the news articles I read about your experiment. How did you control this? What coordinates did you give the 6 viewers so to send them out into space without like tipping off what this was? That's the part I don't understand. Can you explain that?
Okay. Yeah, so randomly generated numbers. I believe I went to random.org and generated an 8-digit number. And then I wrote out the target, and that's a little bit of a art and science to that, of having a precise, sufficient target that encapsulates what you want to know and stuff like that, and without having too much bias or assumption. So that is created and saved, and only the numbers are given to the viewers. So they are in fact blind and they don't know what it is.
So in your description, do you have to use some sort of spatial coordinates?
In the description of like what the numbers are pointing to or associated with, I don't have the actual verbatim wording, but it was basically to look at 3i Atlas and basically observe its nature within our solar system or whatever. So not a whole lot of like overwhelming descriptions, so as to keep it sort of succinct and able to delve into kind of smoothly, I guess you could say, without too much confusion, which could be if you get too much into something, it could be a little burdensome perhaps. But so yeah, just a clean sort of target for them to go into with no real assumptions. And really the intent was to say, what is this thing? Some people are saying that it could be artificial or looks weird, could just be a comet. We don't know. Let's see what impressions we get.
Well, like you said, even if it is a comet, it's a pretty weird one. I mean, even Loeb has pretty much already determined that. The astronomers already think that. It's like it's very unusual, even if it's natural. It's like,
Right. Agreed. Yeah, it's like I think he is still maybe somewhere at a 4 on his Avi-Loeb scale of potential artificial or natural. So that's almost kind of like 50-50, which is that's kind of incredible for an object speeding through our solar system.
Yeah. Did you have anything to do with let me see if I can pronounce this right, the Oumuamua thing?
I did not do any viewing with that or create a project around it. In fact, I haven't seen too much viewing. I saw one group and I'm not sure about it, but my sort of impression, I guess, or assumption is maybe it was artificial and like kind of a defunct or artifact, that was maybe non-operational and just continued sailing through, which this could turn out to be as well. We don't know, but that's one possibility. But
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I got to get down the rabbit hole a little more here. So, all right. So you with remote viewing, you were running around looking at things in space, but apparently this also works in terms of time too, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and you have to explain this. So I know you can go backward in time. Can you go forward in time?
You can go forward in time. It's a fluid phenomenon where things can change.
Right.
Just the sheer fact of viewing or talking about something could.
Oh, lost you, John. Hello. Start.
Okay.
Yeah. There you're back. So yeah, so you were saying that it's fluid in the sense that well, I mean, I've had a physicist on here explain the fact that you simply there's multiple futures, so you don't necessarily know which one you're going to be into, right?
Yeah, so it's like either multiple futures or future potentialities and or parallel future realities. But I think it's easier to delve into the past because our relationship, at least to it, is sort of static, and we can look back and say, well, when George Washington did this, we can all agree what that was, and we can look and see.
Right.
Uh,
And I never thought about this before. Are there multiple pasts? I know everyone says there are multiple possibilities for the future, but are there multiple pasts? There aren't, are there?
It's certainly possible because basically, kind of one of the notions is that once you get outside of physical reality or our kind of bubble existence in 3D space, time is really not the same. It's almost like infinite. So it could be ongoing. And what we're seeing from our point of view is sort of an exercise played out in our frame of reference, but outside of that, it could be entirely greater and more open.
Yeah, there's this. I don't know if you've seen this. There's this supposed transcript of some U.S. military personnel interviewing an alien. So I have no idea if this is true or not. But the one thing that was in the transcript is they said that they asked the alien if time exists, and the alien said yes, but time is non-linear, and you humans don't understand that. And the reason I brought that up is because there's a Polish physicist this summer, and I don't know if you saw this. I can't remember the guy's name, but he has determined that there's 3 dimensions in our space and time, 4 dimensions. But he's determined that time itself is 3 dimensions. So in essence, we have a 6-dimensional universe. And I thought, well, that kind of plays into what this. I have no idea if this alien transcript thing is real or not. But in terms of what this guy's come up with, and supposedly, if he's right, it will solve most of the problems in physics that for the grand unification theory, supposedly, if he's correct. So do you know anything about this or have any thoughts on this at all?
My own personal thoughts are that, that is one possibility. It's like, what angle do you want to look at it from? You've got string theory that says, 12 or 9 or 12 dimensions. And then you have, different physicists or whatever that have come along and said, well, there's this many dimensions or this folding space that exists based on these calculations. I think that kind of changes back and forth, and I think it's a good thing to explore. But I personally kind of got away from like trying to think of how many dimensions per se, because it's like it depends on how you divine a dimension, and 3D is basically a point, a line, and a object, or
Have,
three coordinates.
have you or anyone you know with remote viewing ever attempted to go into another dimension? Which it's like, has that ever happened, or do you know anything about this? Anybody's ever tried it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that's usually pretty interesting. One of them that comes just off the top of my head was when I was tasked the Bardo state, which is this sort of theorized state in Buddhist thought and practice of like sort of in between dimensions and realities. And I was, basically kind of in a space like setting, and I was seeing these sort of separated like roots and channels of reality. And then like,
oh, you did this yourself, right?
Yeah. I did that in a what's called ERV, extended remote viewing, where it's more like a deep meditational, and you can go a little bit deeper into things. So yeah, it was interesting, and things like that, where you're experiencing other dimensionality, and that comes up often, but it's not always you're not always able to capture it within our limited rational brains.
Well, right, and that gets almost back to like, there's one theory floating around, and people talk about near-death experiences. And the one thing about people who have near-death experiences, apparently about 20% of all people whose hearts go kaput and they come back have them, supposedly, is that the common denominator seems to be now that people experience something they literally can't explain verbally. That maybe the experience is the same for everybody, but it's so weird they literally can't talk about it, or they try, but that's the reason the descriptions are different, because everyone says, well, I can't even explain to you, what I saw, it's like, and so there's a theory that and the remote viewing thing and the interdimensionality supposedly of some aliens, that it's all the same thing. Do you have any thoughts on that? About that it's all taking place in some different dimensional world, but it's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically everything, in my view, is everything is connected on some level of reality, energy, or what have you. And it's the higher up you go is really how much opened up you are to all that is, or your connection to such things. And of course, we're limited here just based on our biology. But yeah, certainly I see. Yeah, I mean, these things exist, and we perceive aliens in these spaces, or we perceive spirits. And you can, if you're in a certain state, you may be interacting or going somewhere as well, whether it's some deep remote viewing, or astral travel out of body, or near-death experience.
I can't pronounce this. There's this drug called Akushkanaya. Is that, do you know what I'm talking about?
You're not talking about ayahuasca, are you?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Can't pronounce it. So now this also happened this summer too, and I think this guy's in Britain. Some researcher and he uses the drug, but he realized after talking to people that everybody who uses the drug ends up in the same space. So he thinks it's not actually a drug. He thinks it's actually like you put this in your body and it becomes a portal to some sort of alternate reality, because he realized that everybody who does this their explanation of where they're at is basically the same. And also the beings they run into, which apparently are really weird. There's some of them are like little minions from the movies, it's like they're little leprechauns running around. And then there's these mantis aliens, and it's like, and he finally suddenly realized everybody's talking about the same thing. They're all in the same space. Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I've never done ayahuasca, but I've got a lot of experience in some others like salvia. And basically, I feel like in part it probably has like a biochemistry component as to how your body reacts, but also there's, I guess like a spiritual level to it, or what you're open to or accustomed to as well. And I think a lot of times people are propelled into a space, and maybe that is being captured by some curious or controlling or something like entities, or you just pop into the space. But other times you may be out hurtling across the universe or into another dimension, and this can be full bore where it's um, magnitudes more real or stronger than like a meditation or something like that. And you could be experiencing a full-on parallel reality that's as real as this, you and I talking, and then suddenly that breaks away and you're back to where you were, and you're like, holy SHT. What just happened?
We're not,
really be that?
you can swear we're not over the airwaves here. So, and I do it regularly. So
Uh,
now I'm backtracking a little here, but it's a friend of mine asked me specifically to ask you this. Is remote viewing and out of body travel the same thing? Or actually, what he really asked is that how does it actually work when you're projecting your mind to another location? Do you actually feel the travel there, or do you just show up? Can you explain to us stupid people how this works?
Oh, yeah. So there is a gradation or a spectrum. You may be sitting at your desk and you're getting perceptions, and they're somewhat faint, and you're getting words and descriptors and stuff like that. And maybe you're starting to build more imagery. Um, and then you may start to perceive that you're kind of out of sight, especially if you're doing like an ERV where it's typically dark, you might have an eye mask, you're kind of immersed. So they have what's called bilocation, which actually is a phenomenon that existed before remote viewing, but or was talked about. But that's the idea that you're kind of like at the location and here, and you want to be careful like getting too lost into it. But by and large, it's a good thing, and they're not exactly the same thing. Out of body and astral travel, they're kind of different in terms of like the methodology and then kind of the effect, but it's also part of the same connecting phenomenon. And with out of body, it's just a little bit harder to kind of coordinate it, and to most people coming back and remembering everything or whatever. But it's certainly, and I've done the out of body, as I say, it can be certainly very interesting and compelling. And to me, it's like the real essence of the thing. Being able to fully experience something like that is obviously kind of enjoyable.
So let's put on our speculation hats here. I want your personal opinion on this. What do you think's going on in the universe? What's the deal with human consciousness? Have you drawn any conclusions about the human mind or human consciousness doing all this stuff?
It's a little bit general. I guess I'm curious from what angle you mean, like why we're here, or what is consciousness, or
Pick one.
yeah, to me, if you want my personal opinion, it's like
That's what I want. Yeah, I do.
yeah. And I've felt this a long time. Is like it's kind of it's a play of sorts where we're on the stage and it's an experience, and we're kind of here for the experience. It may not be for some people. It's like they look at things like learning or karma, that could be part of it. And it's like it's kind of like, why not? Like, why if we didn't have it, then the alternative would be, we're limiting ourselves from that experience. There is the whole struggle and difficulty of physical reality and existence. But this living on the other side of the veil, so to speak, is just another experience. And I think we go on to something bigger. And, there are different thoughts and theories about, well, were we all created by aliens, or is it a prison planet? And maybe there's a little bit of that as well. But I think ultimately, people are spiritual beings living in a vessel or a body, and our reality is actually much bigger than this.
John, what I want to see somebody do, I don't have time to do it, but what I want to see somebody do at some point is write a book about all the things that supposedly alien abductees have been told by the aliens. I don't know if you've ever, supposedly the way this generally works is that people, they're abducted, they could have this medical procedure, they're examined, and the aliens, and usually it's grays, are pretty cold and unfeeling, but after it's done, sometimes they actually take questions. Is there anything you want to ask us? And people ask and they get answers. And one of the things that's come up regularly, I guess, is people say, well, can you explain, do we live after we die? And the universal answer seems to be, you don't understand. This isn't really life. Life starts after you die. That's the general. And I kind of get the impression you're kind of saying the same thing, that this isn't life. This is a precursor to life. Am I getting this correctly from you?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a pit stop, and, there are different things on the menus for different people, I guess. And, from there we go on, and it is sort of like when we're awake, we're really asleep, and when we're asleep, we're actually awake, and we're open to this greater reality.
Interesting. I'm going to put your website on the screen here. Oh no, it's because I'm sorry, we got it all screwed up when we had a technical problem there, so I lost it. Sorry about that. But it's adventures in remoteviewing.com, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You
Yeah.
can find the latest information about the 3i Atlas project. We've got some new stuff coming up about that, and new viewings, and that'll be interesting. So yeah. Check it out.
I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been really fascinating, and thanks for explaining this all, because it's like, first of all, most people don't know about it, and then people are skeptical too. So it's like, I really appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on, and appreciate it.
Take care. It's John Adams, the proprietor of adventuresinremoteviewing.com. Great talking to him. Fascinating conversation. People are doing some amazing things, This is part 2 of our show. We call it the Gymcast. I talk about the news that you generally don't hear about, but not tonight. I had a bunch of science news planned, which is usually my want. We usually talk about that because no one else in the media talks about it, and it kind of goes along with the stuff we do on the show. But tonight, I really feel compelled. I have to talk a little bit about this thing about Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled, and not as cancellation per se, but how that reflects on people's perceptions of freedom of speech. That seems to be the big thing right now. And this is as a lot of things we talk about here and that the media talks about, the mainstream media tries to oversimplify everything. This is actually a pretty complex issue. I read a lot of stuff on this today, and of course I took yesterday off and spent most of the day in bed, to be honest, so I had a lot of time to read then too. The best analysis I've seen about this whole issue was from Mark Halperin, uh, he runs the two-way.com news service, I think. Anyway, his column was in the Daily Mail. And I thought did the best job explaining it to everybody as anyone, but there were a lot of people who did a pretty good job too. Also in the Daily Mail, Lisa Kennedy Montgomery from Fox News, she wrote a column too that was also pretty illuminating. But here's the general deal. So it's a complex issue because there's a lot of conflicts here, and it's not all like one-sided. Excuse me. People are complaining that the FCC chairman, Brennan Carr, basically bullied Disney and the station affiliates of ABC into canning Jimmy Kimmel. That's, how do I put this? Yes, he might have done some of that, but I don't know if the general consensus I'm reading is that it didn't make any difference. And so now there's two ways to look at that too. Carr he did say straight out in a podcast the day after this happened. He said that talking to Disney ABC, the Disney company owns the American Broadcasting Network. Said, we can do this either the easy way or the hard way. And that basically sounds like a threat from the FCC commissioner. Now, something needs to be explained here that you don't hear in the media. Disney does not need a broadcast license from the FCC to run the American Broadcasting Company. They don't need that. You might think that, well, they might have their license pulled, but technically they don't have a license. The people that have the licenses are all their affiliate television stations across the United States, and they're all individually licensed. Got that? So, for example, I think each of the three major networks has about 220 affiliates nationwide, roughly. I don't know what exactly. I did not look exactly what the breakdown was for all three of them, but let's go into the assumption that ABC has about 220 stations. They each get a broadcasting license for their immediate local area. Now, the technology now exists so that this wouldn't have to be in place. But when television started in the 1940s and 50s, the only way you could broadcast a signal nationwide was to relay it to these other stations. And that's where this is basically a legacy technology, if you will. I mean, now here I'm broadcasting across the entire world, and we actually have people in Australia that watch this because I get emails from them. I know that. But in the past, this is the way it worked. And the reason this system is still in place is because it's very profitable for everybody. Because the one thing that's hard to do on the internet, although not far from impossible now, it's been figured out, is running local advertising. So if ABC is rebroadcasting their signal to the affiliate stations, they can run both national advertising and local advertising, and it's worked out great. And that's how come nobody wants to tip the apple cart over, because this is still working on a financial level quite well, actually. Although maybe that'll change soon, but that's another discussion. So the individual stations each have broadcast licenses. And the reason they have them is because there's only a finite amount of broadcasting bandwidth, literally bandwidth, spectrum in the transmission there's the transmission spectrum that the stations can use. It's finite. You can't, and this all started in the 1920s when anybody could. In the 1920s, radio basically started kind of like the internet did in the 1990s. Anybody could set up a radio station. Anybody. They didn't need permission. They didn't need a license, nothing. But the problem with that is, especially in large cities, people, it was hard to differentiate the frequencies of the different stations. And a lot of times they broadcast over each other, and it became a mess. And the U.S. government quickly realized something had to be done about this, because literally this industry would collapse if they didn't. And so that's where the FCC was created. I think it was originally called the Federal Communications Authority or something like that. I can't remember. but it had a precursor. And so they started to give out licenses so that stations operated on certain frequencies. And that's the reason these licenses exist. Now on the in the internet, or conversely on cable television, which has infinite bandwidth, you don't need a license for that very reason. You don't have to, one person's website doesn't conflict with another person's website. And therefore, as long as you have a unique, distinct address, which is what domain names are, like, for example, not to drag him into this discussion, we were just talking about adventuresinremoteviewing.com. That is a unique address. You can set up a website. You don't need a license to do it. Although John Dvorak, the old internet columnist for PC Magazine, he said years ago, and unfortunately I still think he's right, that at some point in the future you'll probably need a government license to start a website, just because they want to license everything for no other reason. And I hate to say it, I think he might be right, but the license isn't necessary, whereas in broadcasting it is absolutely necessary. Got that? Okay. So according to the licenses, you have to act in the public's best interest. Now, the original licenses were given away, but now companies can sell them, basically transfer. They can get a fee for transferring them. They don't actually own. No television station or radio station actually owns the license. It's granted to them by the federal government, but they can charge somebody to transfer it, which means in essence they own it. Okay, so they own it under the largesse of the government, which says you have to act in the public interest. Now, what Jimmy Kimmel said in his monologue on Tuesday night was a bald-faced lie. I mean, there's just no way around that. He said that the guy who shot Charlie Kirk was obviously a MAGA conservative, and B, that MAGA Trump America, the administration, was trying to cover this fact up. And we knew by Monday, if not sooner, that was absolutely not true. The kid was even though his parents were conservative, the kid was a progressive liberal living with a transgender man or woman, or a man transitioning into a woman. And the whole thing was driven by leftist ideology. We knew that. And here Kimmel comes along, he states a blatant untruth. Now, newspapers don't need licenses either, because there's no bandwidth conflict there either, right? Only this is a thing specifically to broadcast radio and television that you need these licenses. And one of the things about in the license is acting in the public interest. And so you could make an argument, a very solid one, that blatantly lying to the public is not within the public's interest. Now, the other thing that's important here too is Jimmy Kimmel is not a journalist, and this is not a news program. So the First Amendment allows a largesse, let's say. I was going to say license, but we get confused. Largesse to news organizations. They have freedom of speech. If ABC News decides they want to say that this kid was MAGA, that's also a blatant lie. But news organizations are given leeway to do their job. So because of that, although there is, like, Trump just sued ABC for libel and he won. Well, they negotiated and they gave him. But the thing is, it was George Stephanopoulos said on the air several times that he was a convicted rapist. And that's absolutely not true. Trump did lose the lawsuit to E. Jean Carroll, but rape was not part of the charges. It wasn't. So it was absolutely not true. And apparently Stephanopoulos was warned by higher-ups not to say that, and he did it anyway. So there's an example of where some of this comes into play. But the thing is, like I said, Jimmy Kimmel Live is not a news show, and he's not a journalist. So you could make an argument he can't say blatant lies on TV. That's the argument. Now, the other people, on the other hand, too, and this is a legitimate thing, you could make the argument that the FCC commissioner was threatening the Disney Corporation if they didn't pull him. And the government should not be doing that. And I think that too. The government should not doing that. Now, this is in this particular instance, it's a very gray thing. But here's what isn't gray, and that is the two largest owners of affiliate television stations in the United States, a company called Nexstar and a company called Sinclair. I mean, I think they between the two of them, they own about 40% of the television stations in America, I think. And this is off the top of my head. I don't know the exact number, but I think each one of them owns about 24 ABC affiliates. So maybe about roughly 50 stations are involved here. But both of them told ABC, called them and said, "Look, you get this guy to cut this shit out because we're not gonna air this program anymore if you don't." And that's actually here why Kimmel got canned. In other words, what Brennan Carr, the FCC commissioner, did is unfortunate and dubious. I agree, it's dubious, but it was also probably unnecessary. He would have gotten canned anyway. It was, but Mark Halpern brings the idea up here when when you pile on like that. So you got your affiliate owners telling you to stop this crap, and then the FCC commissioner says, we can do it. Literally, the quote was, "We can do this either the easy way or the hard way." The hard way would be regulation. That maybe piling on might have made a difference too. But the affiliate owners were the two major ones were really, really fed up with this stuff. I mean, Kimmel's been doing this stuff for years, and this was kind of the last straw. There's a lot of people around the country who thought this was very distasteful. So, is that a matter of free speech? Well, no, it's not, because the thing is, first of all, television is a commercial enterprise, and there's no commercial protection. There's no protection of commercial speech. There isn't. That's been decided by the Supreme Court many times. If you say something in terms of like you can't just say anything like in a commercial or in a broadcast where that's set up to make money, which of course the Jimmy Kimmel Live very obviously is. And so there's no free speech involved in that anyway. But on top of that, it appears, and I'm going to show you something here. I actually pulled something up. Look at this. I actually did some. This is a chart of the ratings for the three major late night television shows in America over the last 15 years. So you got Jimmy Kimmel Live on the left, The Late Show, that's Stephen Colbert in the middle, and The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon on the right. Now, if you'll notice on the right in the red, there's one huge spike in the graph, and that spike is where Fallon took over from Jay Leno. That's what's there. Now, there's also it's also marked in the middle section on The Late Show where Colbert took over from Letterman, but you'll see there is no spike. I know this is probably hard to read, especially if you're on your phone. But even I'm on a large monitor and I'm a large monitor, and it's not particularly easy to read. But here's my point, and that is, I'm summarizing this over the three shows, but it's pretty consistent, and that is over the last 10 years, these shows have lost each of them have lost about 80% of their audience. 80% has gone away. So CBS said Colbert is losing $40 million a year. And his ratings, if you can tell, it's actually hard to tell, but on this graph that I'm showing you, but his ratings are higher than Kimmel's right now, and actually always have been. Kimmel has never done as well as Colbert has. So you could only imagine that ABC is losing a shitload of money on Kimmel too. And on top of that, like the big buzz on the Late Show is that it takes 200 people to put it on. I've heard that Jimmy Kimmel Live employs 300 people. I don't know if that's true. I don't, but that's what I've heard. So it's at least as many as Colbert. He has at least as many employees as Colbert has. So these shows have been absolutely bleeding money. The same's true with the Tonight Show too, but I've heard the Tonight Show only has 100 staff members, and also because of the legacy of the Tonight Show. I mean, this show, there's literally has a 70-year history. I mean, it started in 1955 by Steve Allen, and it's only had what 5 hosts in 70 years. I don't think NBC is going to kill the Tonight Show. They will probably kill Seth Meyers' show, because my impression is they're bleeding money hand over fist too, and that has no legacy component or no history. But I don't. Also, the other thing is, although the ratings for the Tonight Show under Jimmy Fallon are not good, they're killing it on social media. Fallon on online has way bigger footprint than all the other shows put together. I mean, it's like, so there's some profit center in that too. So my prediction is that Fallon will still survive this, but I don't think Seth Meyers will. And my point here, and I'm not the only person who's saying this, is that Disney might have used this as a very, very convenient way to pull the plug on Jimmy Kimmel. And I doubt he's coming back. I mean, supposedly he's been quote unquote indefinitely suspended, but I don't think he will. I will be surprised. My betting money is he will not return to the airwaves. I think so at the end of the day, like I said, Brendan Carr, the FCC commissioner, really muddied the waters on this, and probably dubiously so. I'm trying to be very fair here, because I agree too. I do not think that the FCC should be deciding what is and isn't on television. I don't. But that said, Kimmel would have lost his job anyway. And I think, as Kennedy said in the Daily Mail, that they're just using this as an excuse to get rid of him. That's what I think's actually going on here. And my point is, if you have a television show on a commercial television network, there's no free speech involved. There isn't. I mean, even on a legal, practical level, you don't have the right to say anything you want. You don't. You can on the internet, and you can if you're standing, on a soapbox in the middle of the public square in your city. You can say whatever you want. But on a commercial television, you can't. So that's what I wanted to bring up here. And I want to explain that to you folks. So I hope I've done a decent job doing that. I want to thank you guys for watching tonight. Let me go through what we got next week. Next week, we're running the rerun of the Ukraine show from September 9th tomorrow night. On Monday, Don Zoro's here. Always a good time. Tuesday, Eric Weir, the author of the book Who's Eating Your Pie? Essential Financial Device That Will Transform Your Life. Excuse me. Wednesday, Mandy Gunasekara is here, and she's wrote You're All Fired, a Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. She's a former chief of staff of the U.S. EPA under the first Trump administration. And Thursday, we may or may not do a show. That's on next Thursday, the 25th. I do not know yet, but I should know by Monday. So that's what we got going on. Thank you for watching this, folks. You make this all possible. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good night, a good weekend. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. And good night to you, wherever you may be. I'll see you on Monday, folks. You take care. Have a good weekend.